Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
It is picked up by the Lions. Coming back right side, 25. Picks up a block at the 30. It's at the 40.
Drink it in, drink it in. Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
Rolls to the right. Stafford throws deep. Got a man out there. Enzo. Caught. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Marvin Jones. Stafford!
Drink it in, drink it in.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Cornbread.
Drink it in, drink it in, drink it in, man.
Detroit Koolaid drinkers. We are back here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast on a Wednesday, July 8th. I can't believe it. This is Derek Oakrey, your host. I'm at Derek Oakrey on Twitter. Coming here to you solo today, but I got a jam-packed show. Really excited about it. Thank you guys for listening. I'm not going to do too many news and notes off the top. I just got a couple quick things, and then we'll get into our main topic for the day. The main news and notes I have is that the Detroit Lions have let me down. They really have. I mean, I predicted weeks and maybe even a month ago, whatever it was, that the Detroit Lions and Bob Quinn were going to go out and shock the world and sign Jadeveon Clowney, the big defensive end, basically the top free agent that was on the board in this free agent class, and he's still available. I said it would happen right before July 4th. They did not go out and do that. Most of you know I'm half kidding because I did that show knowing that they probably weren't going to do so. I'm not a big proponent of going out and spending huge money in certain areas, but for a defensive end, for a guy with this type of athleticism and skill set, the Detroit Lions' biggest hole is a defensive end, a rush player that could play opposite of Trey Flowers, in my opinion. I know they have a different scheme to some degree, but a guy like that can do nothing but help you. So, real disappointed. I mean, they didn't meet my deadline of July 4th. It could still happen. There's been no rumblings. You know, there's been other teams talked about for Clowney, but nobody for the Detroit Lions. But who knows? It could still happen. But if it doesn't, Bob Quinn, you let me down. I think it was another chance to help your football team and you know, give them a better chance to win this year. But I can understand not doing it if you're buying the guys you currently have and what you have going forward. We will talk about those guys you have going forward, as I'm going to look at the 2020 Detroit Lions football team, and I broke them into three categories. First category is kind of like your core pieces or guys that you lean on to win ball games, some of your top players at different positions. The middle tier is what most NFL teams are made of. Those are just all types of players that, you know, they're starters, they're backups, they're good players, but they're obviously not going to be all pros or be those elite NFL prospects, but they are, you know, in the mix to be not only on the football team, but good contributors. And then I have a third column, which is kind of those guys that are on the 90-man roster now, but are probably going to not be on this football team when they start playing real football games. So we'll get to that in one moment. I just want to talk about one more thing off the top here, and that's the draft picks being signed. I feel like a couple have trickled in. I want to say, you know, Jonah Jackson signed a few weeks ago. I want to say Stenberg is signed, and the big news was that DeAndre Swift signed on the dotted line, and man, this guy just looks like a pro already. He's somebody put on Twitter, he's already iced up. He had a real nice, you know, watch going. He had bracelets, whatever he had. He looked like he was in shape, ready to go. And I'm just really excited about this prospect. I was doing some work on some other projects this week, and I saw somebody say, oh, yeah, DeAndre Swift, he was a reach in the second round, or the Detroit Lions, you know, that's a luxury pick. They didn't really need him. And this wasn't even Grifka saying that kind of garbage, that kind of negative garbage. This was national, you know, people online saying that. And I mean, I can understand some of the people thinking that running back's a little bit devalued, or you can get it in different ways. But DeAndre Swift, I mean, the people that are proponents of his, and even some of the people that didn't like the pick for whatever reason, they said that he was like a top 15 prospect in the entire draft, and you got him at 35 overall. I mean, this guy's going to be a ball player. I don't have many questions about it. I'm excited to have him. I have kind of dwindled a little bit on Carry On, you know, just because of his injuries and because when he has been out there, Other than flashes, he hasn't shown me what I thought he would after that first little bit, but I'm definitely not giving up on him as a player. But really excited to have DeAndre Swift locked up. I think all the fans out there should be excited. This is a guy that, to me, is just the prototypical 2020 NFL running back. He can do it all. You know, he runs low to the ground. He's shifty. He could score in the red zone. He can catch it. He can pass protect. He's a good guy off the field, all the things you look for. So I'm really excited about that. Now, I wanted to bring this up off the top before our main topic because we got no Jeff Okudah signed. You know, I haven't heard that maybe Julian Okwara got signed. I should know that, but I don't have it right in front of me. He may have got inked up. But we'd like to get, make sure Cephas is locked up, and I'm curious to see what Huntley has. And you got Penasini and Cornell and those guys in there. So, the rookie contracts are so easy now. They're just straightforward, sign on the dotted line. I don't know why this isn't done. We're 3 weeks away from training camp and lots of other question marks up in the air, obviously, but I'd like to get these guys signed up, especially Jeff Okudah, and make sure we're ready to roll. And I don't expect any problems, but it's always better when they're signed up and you can get them totally ready and out on the field and don't have to mess around. So I don't expect any type of issues from Okudah, but Okudah, Swift, Okwara, Jonah Jackson, has me excited. I do have a few new questions about Jonah Jackson. I know he played really good at the Senior Bowl, but I got to watch him on a couple other things I was doing for Pro Football Focus, and man, there's times where he didn't look on balance, didn't look very physical, just didn't really excite me. So I know I've been a proponent of that pick because of his attitude and some of the things he brings to the table, but there's still some things that worry about him just being able to plug right in and be a solid, dominant guard. I think you might see some inconsistencies there, but I'm still hoping that he can, plug right in. I'm hoping Vaitai can be, better than Rick Wagner was, is kind of my hope for him. And then I'd like to see Frank Ragnow take a step forward and be a dominant center with my guy, Taylor Decker, out on the left side that is consistent. He's never going to be an all-pro. He's never going to make many Pro Bowls, but I think he's a solid left tackle out there. So, let's get these rookies signed. Bob Quinn, let's consider going out and getting Jadeveon Clowney, adding him to this football team at a 1 year, anywhere from 14 to 16 million bucks, somewhere in that range would be ideal, and have him play that out, hopefully ball out, and then he can go sign wherever he wants after that. And yeah, we'll take our break. We'll get our sponsors in here. And when I come back, I'm going to break down these 3 tiers of players that I talked about a few moments ago. And, we'll give you player names and position, but I'll spend some time on certain guys talking about why I believe they should be in that spot. But I will move through some of the players rather quickly so we get all these guys in and you can kind of have a feel for the 3 tiers of kind of the Detroit Lions roster as I see it, and get a feel for who are our top guys, who's maybe at the bottom that you didn't even know was on the roster at this point, and who's that middle group that really is crucial to a football team winning at a high level and winning long term. So we'll do all that when we come back from the break. Be right back.
Spring is here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
2 guys drove to work. Neither guy wore a seatbelt. One guy got a ticket. One guy didn't. The same 2 guys drove home. One guy wore his seatbelt. One guy didn't. One guy made it home. The guy not wearing his seatbelt didn't. Don't risk it. Click it or ticket. Paid for by NHTSA.
What's going on, everybody? We are back from the break. Thank you so much for listening to our sponsors. Let's let's go ahead and get into this. Again, just a reminder, hit that subscribe button, share this with a friend, really helps out the show, keeps us going here, allows us to upgrade our equipment, as well as keep pumping you out 2 Detroit Lions podcasts Wednesdays and Fridays right here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. And you can also listen to my Believe, BLEAV, and Lions podcast, which right now drops on Monday mornings. But again, the last week or so, we've had a huge announcement that Benny Blades, yeah, that's right, the Benny Blades, all-pro safety for the Detroit Lions, is going to join that show. Looks like that's going to happen. Hopefully our first show will be either July 16th or that next Thursday. And the show will probably drop Thursday mornings. You can check that out. I'm also going to probably be putting something out on Twitter. If you got a question, or you got something, you've been a Lions fan for decades and decades, and you want to ask Benny Blades a question about when he played, or Wayne Font story or something funny, you can definitely tweet that to me, and I will sort through those and try to get those to Benny once we really get rolling with the show. So that's super exciting. So check it out. 3 times a week you're hearing Detroit Lions from me, my buddy Grifka, Benny Blades, and the Believe, BLEAV, and Lions podcast. So let's dive into these tiers here. I'm going to start off with the top tier. You know, these are guys that, like I say, kind of make the difference between wins and losses. They're your top level type football players, the guy that you put most of your money towards, things like that. So these are in no particular order. Kind of what I did, just so you guys know, is I just went to the Lions website. I sorted it by position, and at least the positions they had, you know, on the website, and then just worked my way down this list from here. So the order will be a little bit scrambled. I'll also talk about some of the positions that they have listed, which caught my eye, and talk about certain players here. So, you know, at the top of this list, I got Jeff Okudah, the number 3 overall pick, drafted corner. You know, yeah, he's a rookie. Yeah, he's coming in, but he's got to be a top ball player on this team. He's got to replace Slay, which doesn't mean, you know, 100% from his production, but he definitely needs to be a starter day one, be out on the field, be able to cover the other team's number 1, and just impact the ball game. You know, I'm not going to put a number really. I know we've done those shows before of how many picks will he get, you know, what kind of things will he do. I just want him to be out there, be a productive player, and, you know, be one of the top players on the Detroit Lions here, both in his first year and definitely moving forward. Next guy on my list, Tracy Walker. I talked about him, about maybe being a Pro Bowler this year, really jumping on the scene. I think he's going to catch a lot of people in the NFL's eye, as well as be a leader, a captain, a guy you can depend on. I don't know, sometimes on this show we call him a dog, and that's Tracy Walker. I just love this guy as a player. I think he's really going to come into his own. I can't wait to see it. Trey Flowers, you know, paid him a bunch of money. Started slow last year and then came on. I think Trey Flowers is a really solid defensive end player. He's not a freaky athlete that's going to get you 20 sacks, but I would expect double-digit sacks almost every year, and a lot of disruption and great play in the run game. He's a really solid all-around defensive end, and that's what the Detroit Lions want. Next guy on my list is Jamie Collins. They paid him about $10 million on average, even though when you really look at those numbers, it ends up being less than that over the life of the contract. I think he's being brought in here to be a playmaking linebacker as well as a coverage linebacker. I think the Lions need somebody that can cover much better than they've had previously, as well as a guy that can move all around the defense and is athletic enough. Sometimes Jamie Collins is just going to win on athleticism, you know, just his ability to do things that other guys can't do. And I'm excited to see it. I hope his head's in the right place. I hope he can be a nasty football player and somebody that really helps this defense. Next player on my tier 1 here is Frank Ragnow. They spent a pretty good draft resource picking the 20s on Frank. He was a really good offensive lineman, a center in college, barely let around any sacks. They brought him in as a guard. He struggled a bit. They moved him back to center. He seems like he's found a home, but I still don't see dominance. You know, he always does his job. He's always, you know, more than serviceable, but I don't think of him as this road grader, this guy that defenses just have to deal with, and he's, you know, a total force. Now, I think he can get there. I think this is a big year for Frank Ragnow where he could take a big leap and be a a well-known center in the NFL and somebody that is that type of player, but he just needs to step up, I think, the intensity a little bit, as well as the overall strength and the ability to move bodies in there, as well as he does a good job with communication. So excited about that. Not much needed to be said on the next guy, Matt Stafford. I mean, he's the quarterback. He's the leader. If he's healthy, I think he makes the type of plays that Pat Mahomes makes with his arm. I think sometimes he needs to come up a little bit bigger in clutch moments, and people are going to say he's got the fourth quarter comebacks. I get it. I'm talking about the biggest games of the season. Everything's on the line. He's leading the team. He's getting them jacked up. I put on Twitter at Derek Oakrey this week. There's a 5-minute thing with Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl, and Pat Mahomes was just on every play. He was just, we got this, let's go, getting his guys fired up. Don't worry, we're going to come back and score. Just get open, I'll throw it to you. Like, he was just yakking all day long with confidence and the ability to say, I'm going to lead this team verbally and with my play. And I think we've seen that from some points with Stafford when he's mic'd up. But I need to see it more. I need to see, hey, the division is on the line. You raise the team up and you win the game. You make up for bad plays on defense with what you do with the offensive side of the ball. You don't start slow. We don't need any more slow starts, and then you come back in the fourth quarter. Just play really good football and use all these weapons you have. And like I said, I love the guy off the field. I think he has everything when it comes to arm talent. He's still barely 32 years old. There's no reason Matt Stafford can't be the top player on this team, and that's what you want from your quarterback, as well as a guy that can elevate this whole team to a new higher level than they've been in the past, now that he has a better cast around him. Next guy I have on my list is Kerryon Johnson. I feel like Kerryon, I deemed him 2 years ago, I think it was, to Grifka, of a guy that I don't need to see this guy for the next 5 years to know he's good. And I still don't. He's a good football player. He can run. He can catch it a little bit, even though he's had some drop issues. He has the injury issues. We get it. Can score in tight. He can also break away if he gets a seam with some of his speed. I think he's a definitely above average NFL running back. I'm not too worried about injuries because I feel like injuries are unpredictable. People can say you're injury prone. Some guys are more prone than others, but Kerryon's just a guy that has been beat up, and there's no reason he couldn't come and have, all you need him to have is a couple, 2 to 3 healthy seasons where he's really productive to get right back on track where he should be in his NFL career. So I'm hoping that starts in 2020. He was a fringe player on my list just because I almost moved him into that tier 2, just because we've taken my next guy on the list, DeAndre Swift, as well as I almost need him to show me again. Show me, 6-8 games where you really play top-level football. You don't drop any passes. You get the yards that are given to you. You break away a couple times, and you score some much-needed touchdowns for this team. But Kerryon still made my tier 1. DeAndre Swift, the next guy. Like I said, you can't baby these rookies. You got to come in and get them the football, use their talent. I think he's a top, 5 to 8 football player on this team from day one, just based on what he can do with the ball in his hands and what he does in other areas as well. So really excited to see DeAndre Swift. You've heard me talk about that many a times on this show. Next player I've got is Duron Harmon. They brought him in from the Patriots, traded for him. Super excited about this guy. I think that a lot of people are sleeping on him. I think we gave up a 5th round pick for him. Oh yeah, he's a veteran safety. Okay, he's coming in. He's nearly 30 years old, whatever he is. This player is going to free up Tracy. It's going to be a great mentor, I think, to Will Harris. He can go get the football, which we haven't had since GQ was in his prime, picking off balls multiple times a year, helping us win football games. I think Duron Harmon's going to be a player on the field, a leader in the locker room, a guy you're going to love in the community, and somebody that if he can play, I don't know what his contract is. I want to say he's got 2 to 3 years left. If he can maximize those 2-3 years in Detroit, he'll end up being a Detroit favorite, a Detroit legend type player if he can really play at the level I'm expecting and hoping for. Really excited about Duron Harmon, as you can tell. So he made that list. Grifka, this is for you. I know you're out there listening somewhere. Taylor Decker, the next guy on my list, left tackle. He's been the left tackle since day one. The word, rumor, and innuendo is that he's the alpha male in the offensive line locker room. This is a guy that you can depend on. He's a guy that you don't have to worry about if he's out and, creating issues off the field. Could his play be dominant, a little more dominant? Sure. Am I putting him in the Hall of Fame or even as an all-pro tackle? No, but he is on this tier 1 of Detroit Lions football players. Guy you can count on, guy that is going to have way more good plays than bad and be very productive out there at left tackle, especially if you can get him at the type of contract I hope they can work out with him to keep him here. Reasonable amount, but not have to go spend a new draft pick or a new boatload of money to get a new left tackle. Hey, Grifka, it's a double up for you. TJ Hawkinson is the next player on the list. Yeah, the number 8 pick, we get it. You would never take a tight end that high. Hawkinson disappointed me a bit in his rookie year, basically due to injuries and some drops. But watching him again this offseason and seeing the way this guy moves, if he can get that dog in him, if he can get that nasty, if he can get a little bit of, he's been bulking up in the offseason, which people have seen. I think TJ Hawkinson could be a player that you can totally depend on. I can see him being a matchup nightmare. I can see the middle of the field being totally taken over by TJ Hawkinson, allowing the guys on the outside more room to work. I think he probably take a step forward this year, and then 2021, 2022 is where I expect him to elevate into that top 10, maybe even top 5 tight end type category. Marvin Jones Jr., next guy on the list, final year on his contract with the Lions. Love what he does. He's been a little banged up the last couple of years, which you don't like to see, but when he is out there, he can do it all. Always seems to outproduce what you'd expect from a guy that I think only makes $8 million or so, when top-end receivers in his realm are getting, 10, 12, $15 million type category. So it's a great bargain, as well as he's a great guy on and off the field as well. I think he could come in and have a good year. If he has a really good year, obviously don't think the Lions will be able to keep him. If he has a middle of the year and he wants to stay with the Lions, I wouldn't be opposed to them working out, a 2-3 year extension for this type of player and then see what happens. But, I think Marvin's a guy you can definitely count on. He's a guy that can make plays. Kenny Golladay is definitely on my list here, right after Marvin, not in that type of order, but Kenny's the number 1 on this team. She deserves to get paid. Now there's a threshold I'm willing to pay him. I see him in that $12 to $15 million range right now as a player, over a 4 or 5 year deal, but there's been no word on him getting extended or any type of numbers coming out with the Lions, so we'll see how that shakes out. But Kenny's a beast. He can do it all. Love what he brings. What a great pick by Bob Quinn. And the last guy I had on my tier 1, Deshaun Hand. I feel like Deshaun Hand's been totally forgot about. He suffered through injuries, and he can move inside, outside. He's big body, can rush. I mean, he's not an elite athlete in some areas, but he was the number 1, high school prospect. He had a good college career. He really balled out his first little bit with the Lions, and he's been snake bit with injuries. I would hope he comes back healthy and people remember, wow, this guy's a dominant guy on the defensive line, because people act like we have nobody up there. But when they do that, I feel like they're forgetting about Deshaun Hand completely. I think he can be great. Him and Flowers can be the 2 centerpieces. And then you've got some young guys and other people coming up that should be more than solid as well. So that was my tier 1. I gave you guys a little bit on each one of those guys. I'll go ahead and kick it into high gear here as I get to the middle tier, because there are so many players in this middle tier, and I think that's a good thing for the Detroit Lions. I think you want your middle tier of players to be the guys that don't make a ton of money in most cases, are younger for the most part, and are guys that have upside, guys that you can build your team around, or that you're counting on to play bigger roles both now and in the future. And I think that's what the Detroit Lions have. Some of these names are going to underwhelm some, especially if you were outside the Detroit market. You'd be like, man, who's that guy, or why is that guy on there? But I'm telling you, from my perspective, this is kind of my middle tier. So I'm going to read off, I'll do about half the list, then I'll circle back to talk about a few of the guys. So to start my list, again, no particular order, Jamal Agnew, wide receiver. The Lions do still have him as a cornerback on their depth chart, which is either a tell, but probably more so lazy IT guy that doesn't update the depth chart, or the depth chart's not updated because Matt Pat and Bob Quinn say don't update our depth chart because we don't want to give anybody anything on our football team. That's probably more so what it is, to be honest. Justin Coleman, cornerback. I mean, he makes, $8 million plus a year, so he almost went my tier 1, but I just didn't see enough in that first year. I felt like he was too hit or miss for me to go in tier 1, so Justin Coleman is here. McCray, the cornerback, special teams guy. You got A.O., baby! Oruwariye, the cornerback, is there. After him, we've got Austin Bryant, which the Lions have listed as a defensive end, which I know when they drafted him, I think they drafted him more as a linebacker. I would love to see him on the opposite edge of Flowers if they don't add my boy Jadeveon Clowney or some other big-time prospect like the guy from Minnesota or some other type of free agent that is out there. I'd love to see Austin Bryant with his hand in the dirt coming after people. We got Julian Okwara, the rookie, who's also listed as a defensive end, not a linebacker. You've got Romeo Okwara, defensive end. John Pennicini, defensive tackle. Jay Sean Cornell, defensive tackle. Danny Shelton, DT. Nick Williams in the interior. And then Bo Benchwell, offensive guard, as well as Joe Dahl. Good job, Joe Dahl, offensive guard. So that's kind of that's nearly, maybe less than half of my list right there. When you look at that list, I mean, the names that jump out to me is Coleman really needs to be a ball player this year. He needs to be a guy that's always consistent in the slot, a guy that can make plays, somebody that's really impactful based on what he's being paid. And, the slot corner is a very important position in the current NFL. So need to see that type of play from Justin Coleman there. And then, like I said, I mentioned Austin Bryant. I'd love to see him take a huge leap forward. He's totally slept on by everybody. He's either going to be boom or bust. I'm here to tell you. Austin Bryant is either going to be a real ball player that jumps out. It's like, man, what a steal in the 4th round. Or a guy that in 2 years you're thinking, man, we didn't get much from him. He was hurt a lot. He never really lived up when he did play, and he'd be off the roster. But I'm expecting good things from Austin Bryant based on his size, talent, ability, what we saw at Clemson. And then the two Okwara boys jump off the page because, like I said, going all the way back to my draft prep, I said I would love to team up these guys for lots of different reasons. Now they are. I want to see production. I want to see good play and see them both locked in. Danny Shelton, I think, can be a really good piece in the middle of the defense. I expect him to take over the snacks role as well as be athletic and physical and nasty. I hope he has all those things in there. And then, when you look at the guards that I had at the bottom of the list, Joe Dahl and Benchwell, those are two guys where a lot of people are just writing in Joe Dahl by default as left guard. I don't know. If he's not good enough or if other people are better, I could easily see him being replaced and either being a backup or even potentially off the roster. Benchwell, same thing. He's toiled around last year at the bottom or on the roster, never getting snaps. I mean, I'd love to see him as a quality backup, but he could definitely be a guy that bumps to tier 3 or even off the roster here on my current list. Next set of players, let's look at these guys. I got Grifka's other favorite, Jared Davis. I've got Christian Jones, Jelani Tavai, who almost made my tier 1. I'll talk about that in a moment. The ever steady death taxes and Don Muehlbach, the long snapper. You got Crosby, the swing tackle. You got Jonah Jackson, the rookie offensive guard. Stenberg, interior offensive lineman. Fox, the punter. Chase Daniel, not Daniels, everybody. Daniel, let's get that right. Chase Daniel, the quarterback. You got Huntley, the rookie wide receiver, running back, special teamer, whatever you want to call him. I got Ty Johnson here in my tier 2, Bo Scarborough as well. So looking at that, I mean, again, we're always going to have the fight, Jared Davis, me and Grifka. He's always going to say he's not great, not that great. Let me get that right. Because he's not in the Pro Bowl, he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to always back him up because I still see great things on and off the field. I see ability to run and hit. Now, some of his instincts and some of his coverage is lacking, but like I say, I don't paint these pictures of these guys as perfect players. Just because I praise a guy or say I see things in him doesn't mean he doesn't have flaws. So let's get that straight. They're a waffle maker, and I just think Jared Davis can be good still. I mean, I think he can take a leap. I could be wrong here, but I just think he can be a good linebacker player on your football team. I mean, he's in my tier 2. I just feel like even if he underproduces his draft pedigree, he can still either be a starter, be a backup, be an impactful physical player on this team. So I've got him there. Jelani Tavai, the reason I bumped him to tier 2 was just because I haven't seen enough yet, and because he showed he was a complete knucklehead in some degrees by putting things on Instagram of him. What was he doing? He was playing beer pong, but with tequila with his family, and then he was setting off fireworks that blew up in his face. Supposedly no injuries, no issues, but those two things made me think this guy a little more of a knucklehead than I hoped. I mean, I hope he comes out and just plays the middle linebacker position. I think I told Logan Lamorandier, like, dude might have, 80 to 100 tackles. I could see him being real physical, lots of cleanup tackles in the middle of that defense. So if he does that and he plays well and he's solid off the field, and these were just two dumb mistakes that he put online recently, he might get to tier 1 there next year. But right now he's in tier 2, and I have high expectations, but I can't tell you I saw a ton his rookie year other than a few plays here or there. Let's see, anybody else to talk about? I think I hinted on Jonah Jackson earlier that I found some issues with him when watching tape. I mean, we'll see what the guy brings. I hope he's a really good offensive lineman, but I'm a little hesitant now to pencil him in because I just didn't see the physicality or the consistency that I really wanted once I broke it down a little bit more. Stenberg, I think, no doubt has the physicality, but will he be able to move and be able to handle some of these interior players that he'll face based on what he saw at Kentucky is a question for me. Huntley is going to be one of my favorite players to watch because I just don't know what this guy's going to bring to the table. He might wow us. He also might underwhelm and be off the roster before they even get to the 2020 season. I really don't know. I saw some things on Ty Johnson that he had kind of redid his body as a lot of the Lions players have, bulked up muscle-wise and looks a lot more physical, and if he can bring some of that to the football field, that'd be nice because I haven't seen many plays from this guy whatsoever. That's about what I got on that group of players. Again, these are the guys that are making up the core of your roster as well as guys that you need to lean on, even though, Grifka, listen up, they're not going to be on NFL posters. They're not going to be the top players that you see in the magazines. They're not going to be wearing a gold jacket, but they still are really important to the team. Let's get through my last list in this tier 2. Desmond Trufant, Will Harris, Kirsch, the safety they brought in, Killebrew, Hal Vaitai, right tackle. Let's see here. We got Hunter Bryant, the undrafted tight end. We've got, let's see here. We got everybody's favorite, Jesse James, the worthless piece of crap that did nothing last year. He really needs to take a step forward. We've got Isaac Nada, who has seemed unathletic as could be, and now he's a guy I'm rooting for on the team. I hope he can take a step forward. I've got, let's see who else I got on this list here. Geronimo Allison made my tier 2, barely. Amendola was on my tier 2. Cephas, Fulgham barely sneaked into my tier 2, and Marvin Hall as well. So again, we're looking basically at, safeties, tight ends, wideouts. Start out with Trufant, though. He was the other corner on this list. Gosh, Trufant is a question mark for me, man. He can either be in 1 or 3, and I put him in 2 just to somewhat be safe because I don't know what to expect from him. I think he can be a solid player. I think he's a guy that could surprise people with how well he plays and how much Detroit loves him. I could also see it being a miss as well. Will Harris, a guy I've supported a lot. He did let me down last year. He was slow in coverage. It didn't look like he recognized. Finally, at the end of the year, they let him play a little more free, and he seemed to maybe click for him, but we'll see what he does. Now I don't see him getting up to tier 1 because you obviously have Deron Harmon and Tracy Walker there, but just be a solid backup or, player you can create packages for, I guess is sort of my current hope for Will Harris. Let's see here. Killebrew barely made my tier 2 just based on he just made it on his special teams abilities. If I had my way, I'd bump him to tier 3 and he might be off the roster. He got Geronimo Allison. I mean, I don't know. I don't know this guy, if there's a spot for him. You got your top three. After that, it's Allison, Fulgham, Cephas, Hall. How do those guys going to shake out? I mean, I would think it might be the top three. Geronimo and Cephas and Hall would kind of be what I would think, but I still like what Fulgham has. I just don't know if they can wait a full another season for him until Marvin or other guys maybe depart. And yeah, Hal Vaitai, they're paying him 10, 12 million bucks. You would think he would be in tier one, but the guy hasn't shown it. He hasn't been a starter, and I don't even know that unless he plays out of his mind, that he could get to tier one after this season. So you're paying a right tackle that's probably going to be a mid-tier player for you, a boatload of money, and like I say, hopefully he's better than Rick Wagner. So we'll see what happens. So that's my tier two. I am excited about it overall. I mean, I know I've talked about some guys that are a little bit, you're hoping or you're expecting a jump, but there's plenty of football players there that if you compared it to other teams, like the Lions have a younger core, some guys that are really quality, solid football players at what the team is asking them to do. And that's really what you need, because a lot of these guys aren't making very much money. They're making, those low-end NFL contracts, or like the few guys I put in that were higher paid are guys that are just they're not at your key positions either, which is nice. Like sometimes you look at this, you're like, wow, you don't want a bunch of your top defensive ends, corners, quarterback. You don't want those guys in tier two. And the Lions, if you look at the tier one, I had top corners, I had quarterback, I had some skill players, some defenders as well, and that's what you look for. You want those type of premier positions in tier one and tier two. So I think they're set up decently nice. When I worked through this list, there definitely was some players where I would like a little bit more in that tier one. I'd like a little bit higher end players at some spots here in tier two, but like I say, you get to tier three, and like these are the guys that a lot of people don't even think or know are on the Detroit Lions. They are out there. The team sees something in them, but they're not going to impact the 53-man roster for the most part, and I don't expect many, if any, of these guys to sort of be around when it's all said and done. We'll go through these pretty quick. We got Bodine, the backup center, Mike Ford, the windsock cornerback, Michael Jackson, the cornerback. I have a little bit of high hopes for him, but I just haven't heard or seen anything, so he's tier three for me. Darryl Roberts, a veteran corner. I could see him making the roster depending on injuries and how things shake out, but right now I put him on tier three. D. Virgin, I mean, he's been around and actually been active on the team for a bit. I just see him being bottom or off the roster. Huron, the defensive end. John Atkins. Sagapulo, defensive tackle. Strong, defensive tackle. Nick Bawden, fullback. I feel like the Lions are moving away from fullback. I could be wrong. I could see them keeping Bawden, but it just seems like maybe his time is out. He hasn't showed enough, hasn't been healthy, and hasn't impacted the run game the way they hoped. But we'll see with him. Sellers, the backup fullback that they have. Let's see, some of these guys I don't even know, like Benny Noach, offensive guard. You've got Garnett there, offensive guard. Had draft pedigree, but I just don't see a ton from this guy. It's worth a gamble, though. Good old Kenny Wiggins made my tier 3. I mean, maybe bottom of the roster, maybe off the roster. Jason Kabinda, same thing. Elijah Lee, special teams guy. Could see him, not making it. Pittman, the linebacker, they seem to like, but I don't know how he would crack this group of linebackers they already have. The veteran, the guy they brought in, Reggie Ragland, made my tier 3, and there's a couple reasons. I have him sort of as kind of a backup middle linebacker in my projections, but when I started looking at his numbers, the guy's only 26 years old, which I think is still good. I could definitely see a season or two of good play out of him at that age, but they only guaranteed him $173,500 for Reggie Ragland. I mean, his base is $1 million barely on a 1-year deal. So to me, that's a total cuttable contract. If he makes it and makes an impact, wow, what a savings that would be for a player that has some snaps in the NFL and now has a Super Bowl ring in Reggie Ragland. We'll see what happens with him. Jalen Reeves-Maben, also made my tier 3. I mean, he's a special teams demon, but I couldn't find a spot for him in tier 2 there when it came to linebackers. Sam, the linebacker, tier 3. Wordle, backup long snapper. Abuche, backup offensive guard. Sipik, the backup punter. I probably didn't pronounce that right. We got David Blau, third string quarterback. I mean, we saw what he had last year, which was very little. I mean, like I say, I like the mix of him, Daniel, and Stafford, Texas boys. They all seem to know each other. They could be a good quarterback room, but don't expect much from David Blau if he does have to play. Oh, you got good old West Hills. You know the old West Hills on a Friday night when the sun starts to set. Yeah, the West Hills. It's a beautiful for scenery, but it's tier 3 or off the roster when it comes to the Detroit Lions. You've got Dinson, backup safety. Elliott out of Notre Dame, backup safety with a little bit of upside. I just don't know where he would play or how he would make the roster or sneak into tier 2 there. You got CJ Moore, who's been on the team, special teamer. I could see him being off. Price, backup safety as well. Nelson, offensive tackle. Skipper, offensive tackle. Sokol, backup tight end. Victor Bolden, backup wide receiver. Davis, backup wide receiver. Kendi, backup wide receiver. And everybody's favorite, Lacey, backup receiver, finished out my tier 3. So if my count is right, and if the Lions, based on just what they had on their website, that's about 88 names right there. I think 14 or so of those names were my tier 1. You've got from 15 to 51 or so in my tier 2. And then you've got from about 53, 54, all the way down to the end of the roster in that tier 3. So there it is. There's my breakdown. I mean, again, you only take in 53, or I think it's down to 48, whatever it is on game days, 53 men during the season. You got the 8-man practice squad, I think it is. So, that's kind of how it breaks down. Like everybody that's after that, 65-ish cutoff is basically, these are guys that don't make the roster, don't make an impact on the team. So they're not going to kill you. And if one or two surprise you and end up making the team, great. If a lot of those guys in tier 2 that I said play well and above their pay and above their previous, play on the field, I think you'll have a good middle of this roster, and then you need your top guys. You need Okudah to play well. You need Tracy to come into his own. Trey Flowers needs to be a ball player. Jamie Collins needs to surprise. Frankie needs to be a beast in there. Matt Stafford, sling it around the yard. Swift and Carry On need to ball out. Jerron Harmon, be that ball hawk and safety. Taylor Decker, Grifka's going to send you a Christmas card. He loves you and thinks you're the best left tackle in the business. I agree with him. I think you're a solid football player. TJ Hawkinson will take a leap forward this year and exponentially in 2021. You got Marvin, you got Kenny, and don't forget about Sean Hand on the front line. So those are the guys you got to count on. Those are the impact ball players, and that's how I see the roster right now in a 3-tier buckets when it comes to the Detroit Lions. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Again, hit that subscribe button. Give me a follow on Twitter at Derek Okrie, DerekOkrie. Be back at you on Friday with another Detroit Koolaid Cast. And next Monday, next week, we'll see what happens. I got still a couple things to do with Benny Blades. Hopefully, maybe next week, you might be hearing Believe in Lions on Thursday with Benny Blades. So we'll see if we can work that out. If not, keep your eyes out for that. And again, thank you guys so much for supporting the show. It really means a lot. And we're 3-4 weeks away from training camp if all goes well. So excited for that. Football is hopefully around the corner. Take care, everybody. Drink it in. I'm out.
Pack the bag. Start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions.
Drink it in, man.